everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're headed to Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah, but not for the beer gardens or the Brandenburg Gate.
Oh, okay. What are we looking into then?
We're digging into this investigative report from Der Spiegel.
Ah, Der Spiegel.
Yeah, it's about this neighborhood, Waldtierviertel,
Yeah.
where apparently luxury and secrecy have, taken over.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what did they find?
Well, first of all, picture this. Berlin, vibrant, historic, all that. But this neighborhood, it's a whole other world.
Really?
It used to be pretty modest, home to U.S. officers back in the day.
Oh, interesting.
But now, we're talking massive, high-end villas on streets with names like Goldfinkweg, Wildentinsteig. I mean, these names sound like they're straight out of a fairy tale.
So it's like a complete transformation.
Totally. And the report even describes it as having this eerie, deserted atmosphere, like a ghost town of wealth, which is kind of creepy if you ask me.
Yeah, I can see that. So the big question is, who owns these places?
Right. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, lay it on me. Turns out some of these luxury properties are linked to Russian elites.
Russian elites. In Berlin.
Yep, we're talking oligarchs, relatives of powerful figures, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. Okay, so who are we talking about specifically?
Well, there's Arkadij Rotenberg, for starters. This guy's a billionaire, close associate of Putin.
Rotenberg, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's been in the news quite a bit. They even shared a judo club back in St. Petersburg, which is kind of wild if you think about it.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. So Rotenberg, he's, seriously connected.
Oh, absolutely. And he's benefited big time from state contracts under Putin, like the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Right. That was huge.
So you can see how this guy amassed a fortune.
Definitely. But it's not just him, right? You mentioned other figures.
Oh, yeah, it gets even more intriguing. Get this. Irina Verginskaya, Gorbachev's daughter, owns a multi-million-euro property there.
No way. Gorbachev's daughter.
It's like a weird clash of history and high finance, right?
Totally. It's amazing how these worlds collide.
And then there's Boris Paikin, a member of the Russian Duma.
The Duma, that's the Russian parliament, right?
Exactly. And this guy, he's had ties to Berlin real estate going back years, even before he was in parliament.
Interesting. So how did he get involved in Berlin real estate?
Well, the report mentions his mother had been involved in property deals there, and then later, Paikin himself got sanctioned by the EU.
Ah, so we're talking about potential sanctions evasion here.
It definitely raises questions. But even beyond Paikin, the bigger question is how they all managed to acquire these properties, often so quietly.
Right, because it's not like they're just walking into real estate offices and announcing who they are.
Exactly. And that's where the financial maneuvering comes in.
Oh, I was wondering about that. What kind of tricks are we talking about?
Well, one thing they use is called a share deal. So instead of selling the whole property, they sell a portion, a share.
Okay, I'm following.
And the sneaky part, these transactions often don't have to be recorded in the official land registry.
Wait, really? So it's like a secret sale?
Pretty much. It allows the real owner to stay hidden, which is perfect if you want to avoid scrutiny, sanctions, all that.
So it's a way to keep things under the radar.
Exactly. And then there are shell companies. Basically, companies set up just to hide the true owner.
Shell companies, classic. So they create layers of these companies.
Tons of layers, often based in these places called tax havens, countries with super loose financial rules.
Oh, yeah, the Caymans, Panama, places like that.
Exactly. And it makes it super hard to trace the money back to the real owner.
It's like a financial maze designed to confuse anyone trying to follow the trail.
Exactly. And to make things even harder, the report points out that Berlin's land registry system is still mostly paper-based.
Oh, wow. Seriously. In this day and age.
Yeah, it's crazy. So even if you wanted to try and track these transactions, it'd be a nightmare.
Talk about a system ripe for exploitation.
Right. It's like they're taking advantage of a system stuck in the past.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder how much of this is happening elsewhere, too.
That's a great question, and it's something we'll definitely have to explore more in future deep dives.
Okay, so we've got these complex financial structures, a system that's not exactly keeping up.
Right, and the question is, what happens when sanctions actually hit these individuals?
Yeah, does that actually stop them from holding on to their assets?
Well, that's what we'll be looking into next.
All right, I'm ready for part 2.
Let's get to it. So, do sanctions actually work? I mean, can they really stop these individuals from holding on to their assets?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, because we've seen how they use these share deals and shell companies, and it all seems so, I don't know, impenetrable.
Right. It's like trying to catch smoke.
Exactly. So how do you even enforce sanctions when the ownership is so obscured?
Yeah, and the report actually gives some examples of how individuals have managed to, shall we say, navigate these sanctions.
Oh, really? Like how?
Well, take Rotenberg, for example.
Hmm.
He started transferring ownership of some of his properties to family members.
Like his wife and kids.
Yeah, his daughter and brother specifically. And he did this both before and after sanctions were imposed.
So it's like even if you sanction one person, they can just shift their assets to someone else?
It's like a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You hit one mole, another one pops up.
Exactly. And I bet it's even harder to track when you're dealing with family members because there's this like inherent trust.
Absolutely. And there's also the added layer of, potential legal challenges.
Oh, right, like proving intent and all that.
Exactly. And then the report also mentions this other tactic, using a proxy,
A proxy, what's that?
basically a stand-in, someone who holds the asset on paper but isn't the real owner.
Oh, sneaky.
Yeah, they found that Paikin's mother, for instance, transferred assets to a proxy after his son got sanctioned.
So even though he was under sanctions, they could still like control the assets through this other person.
Precisely. It's another way to keep things within the family or their circle of influence, but technically still comply with the sanctions.
Man, it's like they have a whole playbook for this stuff.
They probably do. And these are just the tactics we know about. Who knows what other tricks they have up their sleeves?
Right. It's kind of unsettling.
It is. But, it's also a testament to the investigative work of the journalists at Der Spiegel.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, how did they even manage to unravel all of this? It seems so complicated.
Right. Well, they spent 2 years digging through tons of purchase agreements, interviewing experts, locals.
Wow, that's dedication.
It is. But even with all that effort, there's still limitations.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of digitalization in land registries.
Right, we talked about that earlier. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is made of paper.
Exactly. And then there's the difficulty in proving residency for tax purposes.
Ah, so even if you suspect someone is hiding assets or evading taxes, it's hard to actually prove it.
It can be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And then there's the German government's task force.
They have a whole task force for this.
They do. It was set up to seize assets from sanctioned individuals.
Okay, and how are they doing?
Well, their success has been limited, to be honest. There have only been a few cases where they've made real progress.
So it's an uphill battle.
It is. Because the individuals involved, they have resources, they have legal teams, they're sophisticated.
They're determined to hold on to their wealth.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And it's not just a problem in Berlin, by the way.
It's not.
Nope. It's a global issue. Major cities around the world are grappling with the same challenges.
So we're talking about a vulnerability in the global financial system itself?
That's exactly what we're talking about. And it raises serious questions about the effectiveness of sanctions and the need for, greater transparency.
Right, like how do you actually track and regulate the flow of money across borders, especially in real estate?
That's the billion-dollar question, right?
Yeah, it's a massive challenge.
It is. It feels almost overwhelming.
It can, for sure. But it's important not to lose sight of the fact that we, as individuals, can also play a role.
Wait, really? What can we do? I mean, this seems so big, so systemic.
I know. But hear me out. We can start by demanding greater transparency from our elected officials.
Okay, so like hold their feet to the fire.
Exactly. We need to make sure they're prioritizing policies that actually promote financial accountability.
That makes sense.
And then we can support investigative journalism, the kind of work Der Spiegel did that's crucial for exposing these networks.
Because without that kind of reporting, all this stuff would just stay hidden, right?
Exactly. And there's one more thing we can do.
Okay, what's that?
We can be more mindful of our own financial decisions.
What do you mean?
Well, think about where you invest your money, where you bank, the companies you support. All of those choices, they have ethical implications.
So it's like being conscious consumers, not just of products, but of financial systems too.
Exactly. We're not just passive observers in this global system. Our choices matter.
That's a powerful thought. I mean, it's easy to feel helpless when you're talking about these massive financial networks, but we do have agency.
We absolutely do. And collective action, even at the individual level, can drive real change.
Okay, I'm starting to feel a little more empowered now.
Good. Now, let's bring it back to Wilterville-Viertel for a moment.
Okay, back to Berlin.
Right. Because this neighborhood, it's a microcosm of these larger global forces at play.
It is, yeah. Like, it shows how these abstract financial maneuvers actually impact real people's lives.
Exactly. The report talks about this longtime resident, Bette Schubert. She's seen the neighborhood change over the decades.
And I bet she's not thrilled about it.
No, not really. She talks about how these old homes were just like demolished and replaced with these massive modern villas almost overnight.
It's like the neighborhood lost its soul, its history, all paved over by this wave of like anonymous wealth.
And that brings up some important questions about the social impact of these investments.
Yeah, like who benefits from all this money coming in?
Right. Is it actually benefiting the city or just a select few? And what happens to the people who are pushed out, who can't afford to live there anymore?
It's something cities all over the world are struggling with. This balance between investment and affordability.
Absolutely. And Walter Viertel, it's a cautionary tale, a reminder of the potential pitfalls of unchecked global capital flows.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of like pretty heavy stuff today. Sanctions evasion, shell companies, the challenges of enforcement.
It's a lot to take in for sure.
It is. But amidst all the secrecy and high finance, I feel like the report also offers a glimmer of hope, don't you think?
Oh, how so?
Well, we have the investigative work of Der Spiegel, right? They shined a light on these
Oh,
practices.
that's the point.
And we have the efforts of authorities, even if they're facing an uphill battle, at least they're trying to track down illicit funds.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's a growing awareness among citizens about these issues, thanks to reports like this one.
You're right. Those are all positive signs.
It's like, even though the situation is complex and challenging, there are people fighting for transparency and accountability.
And that, I think, is the key takeaway from this deep dive.
Yeah.
That we can't afford to be passive bystanders in a world where wealth and power operate in secrecy.
So we got to stay engaged.
We do. We got to be informed, engaged, and ask tough questions.
Like, what can we actually do to, I don't know, make these financial systems more transparent? How can we hold people accountable?
Yeah, and don't forget about the power of individual action, like we were talking about.
Right.
Supporting investigative journalism, making those ethical choices with our money, even just talking about this stuff with friends and family.
It all makes a difference.
It does. It all adds up.
So we've gone deep on this, the hidden wealth, the secret deals. What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
That we're not powerless in all this.
We're not just along for the ride.
Exactly. We can choose to be informed.
Demand better.
Yeah, work towards a future where all this wealth and power, it's not hidden in the shadows.
Where everything's out in the open.
Right. Transparency and accountability, that's what we need.
And this isn't just about some oligarchs and real estate.
It's bigger than that.
It's about everyone making the world fairer.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, keep asking those questions.
Keep digging.
Push for that world where transparency wins.
Yeah, transparency and accountability, that's the future we want.
That's it.
And until next time, stay curious out there.